Hi there. So today we are going to be talking about Pluto's moon, Charon, and the discoveries made through NASA's New Horizons spacecraft. Um, First, let's go ahead and dive into a little bit of the mythology and the history of Charon. In Greek mythology, Charon is the ferryman who traveled spirits across the river Styx to the underworld of Hades. His price for this trip was a single coin that was often placed in the mouths of the deceased so they could carry it with them into the afterlife. And so the name Chiron means of keen gaze and or fierce brightness of the eyes. He is often depicted as a grim feature with like a long and gray beard. However, in this photo over here to the right, it shows him a little bit younger than that. And he is often used as a euphemism of death. And this is because as people tend to pass on, a silver glaze seems to almost coat their eyes, which is where the fierce brightness comes from. So, a little bit about the history of Charon. So this moon was first discovered in 1978 by James Christie, who is pictured up here to the right. Um, at the time of its discovery, Christie was not actually looking for any potential moons of Pluto. Instead, he was capturing images of Pluto to hopefully refine its orbit around our sun. However, when looking at these images, he he kind of noticed a weird and elongated bulge on the side, and the direction of this bulge also seemed to change over the 6.4-day rotation period of Pluto. So he decided with this, he got curious, of course, and he decided to go back and look at some older and archived images of Pluto and was able to notice the same bulge on those images as well. So, with this, him and his team kind of dove a little deeper and they concluded that the bulge was actually a moon of Pluto. And the reason this moon had gone undetected this whole time is that Chiron actually orbits very close to its parent planet. So, some physical traits about this moon. One of the more striking traits is its size. Sorry, we're experiencing some technical difficulties, but the size of Chiron um, is about half the size of its parent planet Pluto, at about 1,200 miles in diameter, which makes it the largest moon to its host planet in our solar system. And because of the sheer size of Chiron, Pluto and Chiron are often referred to as a double dwarf planetary system. Some noticeable areas of this moon is the smooth southern region called the Vulcan Planum, as well as the heavily cratered northern region, which is most often referred to as the Ozterra. These two areas are defined by a massive canyon, and were both more closely studied by the New Horizons spacecraft, which completed a 6-month flyby of the Pluto system in 2015. This flyby was able to produce many images and information about Pluto and its moons, especially Charon. The Vulcan planum lies on the southern side of the moon and is visually smoother than the heavily cratered northern region, which is which is different from most moons that are heavily cratered. However, this area is not completely smooth, as it does contain some craters, riles, and mountains. The craters, especially, are more visible here in this image shown, but the riles and mountains are seen with a closer look. So, first, let's talk about the riles that are present here. The Vulcan planum is crisscrossed with riles across its surface, which are identified as small groups. These riles are anywhere from a few kilometers to hundreds in length, and up to 3 kilometers in width. When observing these features, we are able to see that they mainly run parallel to the boundary between the Vulcan Planum and Ozterra. The exact age of these riles are unknown, but they are believed to be fairly young, being formed within the last few 100 million years. We do know that these riles were created before any cratering events took place on the Vulcan Planum. This is visible looking at this image shown over here to the left. When looking at the very left crater right over here, um, sorry, you are able to tell that the crater falls above the riles, almost like it's like kind of breaking up that rile and that connection between the two. They are believed to be formed. These riles are believed to be formed by a process called viscous relaxation, which, in short, is when a planet or a moon's lithosphere deforms and adjusts. An example of this is when the surface of a body is heated, which causes the ice to flow and form long linear features, which are seen here. So another feature of the Vulcan Planum are its mountains. So one of the more distinctive features of these mountains are their height, with some reaching up to 6 miles in height. This is partly due to the fact that Charon is mostly composed of water ice, which is relatively light and easy to move. These mountains also have rugged and jagged peaks. While this sounds very interesting, not a lot is known about these mountains. However, there are two mountains that have a little information on them. The first, excuse me if I'm pronouncing these wrong, but the first is the Kubrick Mons Mountain, which stands at 3 kilometers tall and is about 30 kilometers by 20 kilometers wide. There is also the Butler Mons Mountain, which is larger than the Kubrick. However, this mountain was harder to see in the New Horizons flyby, so not much is known. And you can see the Kubrick Mons Mountain up in this top image and the Butler Mons in the lower image. These two mountains have an interesting structure at their bases, which are convex and depressed margins. The elevation of this is lower than the elevation of the area around it, giving it the darker outline. But due to this, these mountains have now coined the term mountain in a moat. So one last feature is the canyon that separates the Vulcan Planum and Ozterra. So one striking feature is its size. It stands at about 1,100 miles in length and is one of the longest canyons in our solar system. Some depths of this canyon can reach up to 4 miles, and the walls of this canyon are steep and rugged, while the peaks are sharp and jagged. So in some areas, riles are actually even present. This area was thought to have been formed through a combination of tectonic activity as well as the movement of the moon's surface. And if you look down here at this bottom image, you are actually able to see the elevation level differences, with red being the highest and the green, the very green ones, being the lower. So in comparison, really quickly, um, let's briefly talk about the Oz-Terra region of this moon. So the northern region of this moon is heavily cratered, with these craters coming in many different sizes. And some are small and shallow, while others are deep and large that are several miles long. This suggests that this area has been home to a high number of impacts over time. And in this area, there are also troughs, which are thought to be formed through the process of relaxation as well. So as mentioned several times throughout this presentation, the surface of the Vulcan Planum is very smooth when compared to other regions. So in order for this to happen, some type of resurfacing has to happen. This is where the idea of cryovolcanism comes into play. Cryovolcanism is an eruption of materials such as water, methane, and ammonia, which can be frozen or partially frozen. This type of resurfacing is not uncommon for planets or moons that are composed of water ice, especially at such great lengths from our sun. Currently, there is no hardcore definitive proof for cryovolcanism. However, it is the leading theory for this process. It's very well possible that there is another explanation for this resurfacing to happen. So overall, There are many questions about the geology and the surface of this moon, and there are not enough answers provided. New Horizons made the flyby in 2015, so we have had only 7 years total to explore and understand its geology to the best of our ability. So there's more time and more adventures to explore. But what we do know, though, is that this mountain tells a story of a violent history with many impacts. When first discovering this moon, not a lot was honestly expected. Scientists thought that Charon would be monotonous and old, cratered land like some other moons. But this moon has defied expectations and gave scientists a huge surprise. But further study is going to be needed to be done to fully understand the processes of Charon. So the last page here shows the sources that I have used for this presentation. And that is all. I hope you have enjoyed this, and I hope you have a wonderful day and an amazing break. Take care. Thank you.